You've looked through it and you see all of the tuning at the beginning. So here's what's going on with that, and here's why I did that. If you look at measure one, all right, that's on the low D, tells you
Hmm.
that's on the 32. If you look at measure four, then it's got F on the
Yeah.
29-inch timpano, then B flat on the 26, and then D on
Hmm.
the 23.
Yeah.
I did that. I wrote it that way specifically to make sure that everybody who tries out for Allstate, their drums are going to be tuned the same way as the drums that they're going to play on at the audition at the first round and the second round. Plus, those are the standard tunings for timpani in the US. I remember in high school, I went to a band assessment. And, I was just a high school kid. We only had two timpani. And so when we went for assessment, those drums were in different ranges than the drums I practiced on at home. My band director didn't tell me we didn't have gauges on the drums, blah, blah, blah. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to point out the fact that it can be a nightmare because you're not going to bring your timpani with you to audition. You're going to play the ones that are there. So it's important, so everybody who's working on this music, they will have tuned the bottom pitches of all their drums to be the same. And that's a big deal. So each drum gets a range of a fifth. If you don't know what that is, the 32 is D to A, and then the 29 is F to C, the 26 is B flat to F, and then the 23 is D to A also, but it's an octave higher. Okay, so that having those pitches established, that just kind of makes sure that you're working drum to drum, and as you tune your way up, the drums are in they're in the right range, and then as you practice, that you don't overshoot it. Now, I'm going to give you a juicy tidbit about timpani. I don't know how much experience you have with timpani, but from pitch to pitch on each drum, the distance with the pedal is different. Okay, when you're tuning in the low register of the drum, the distance, from measure one to measure two, from D to E, it's just a really small increment. The higher you get, the bigger the distance pitch to pitch. So when you're tuning in the bottom register, you're just barely moving the pedal. And it's good to know that, because when you go to audition, I mean, you've probably played on different timpani before, and some of them have stiff pedals, some of them have loose pedals. And so that can really affect your ability to tune them. So knowing that, this is what I tell all of my students when they're working on tuning. And I know it's going to sound really weird, but I want you to think about your ankles. Your ankles are going to, if you push with the toe of your foot on that pedal, if it's really loose, you're going to overshoot it. If you push with the heel, so you're putting the weight of your leg in a toe push or a heel push. If you think about your ankle, you're going to moderate that movement a little bit more. So you're going to keep from overshooting it or undershooting. It's going to help stabilize your pedaling. Okay, so just think about just as you're working on that, think about it. Don't just think about your toe or your heel, and that'll help you keep from overshooting. And for a while, as you're working on this, just take like the first three measures. You go D to E flat to E, and so you're going by half step. So
Hmm.
walk it up by half step and walk it down by half step, and just kind of practice getting that motion and feeling how small those motions are. Does that make sense? When you get to the 29, you're going to do the same thing, 26, et cetera, et cetera. You want to work yourself around the drums and just work on that chromatic movement. Okay? And that's gonna help you. Now you're gonna want to work your intervals. the drums, where you audition, the gauges are probably going to be reasonably accurate, but I would trust your ear more than you trust the gauges. Okay? So,
Okay.
do you have a pitch pipe or a tuning fork or something like that that you can get
Not. I have an app on my phone, but I don't have an actual
that?
pitch.
Yeah, that works. And so when you start, you want to make you just want to make sure you've got a good starting point and the drums are doing what you need them to do, and then you just kind of work from there and use your ears. Okay? Do you play piano at all?
Well, not really, but I kind of do. Like I know the
I
basic. Like I know how.
Well, I tell you, I can't. I use the piano. I don't really play the piano,
Yeah, that's all
and
right.
and so get behind the piano and play this, and so you get used to hearing how that chromatic motion works. And as you go from one drum to the next drum, things like that, just get used to how these things sound away from timpani, and then get behind the timpani, and then start working that. So you've got the sound of the intervals in your head and things like that. The whole beginning until you get the measure before A, you're finally tuned, and you've got octaves between drums. So between the 32 and the 26, um, you've got the E's, and then you've got the A's on the 29 and the 23. Okay. Here's a big deal at A. So when you need to have the drums adjusted to where you're set up decently, okay? You know where your playing spots are on the drums. Let's see, I'm going to just move this a little bit. When you play that that lick is fast. It's really fast. And so what you want to think about when I start playing the triplet, you notice like that's an easy way to start out. I have to get my shoulders where I want to go. Okay? So if I try I I'm trying to do it all with my arms, and I don't know if it's coming across on the audio, but the bottom drums sound really weak or thin. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to bring my shoulders around. So if I put my shoulders where my hands need to go, then all my hands have to do is play. So I'm not trying to do it all with my hands. I'm using my upper body. And so just think about that. Wherever your shoulders are, your hands are just going to naturally fall into place there. Okay? So
Okay.
because those licks right there measure 23 and 24, and then it comes back after D, 50, 51, and 51 and 52. It comes back, and those are the choppiest moments. And so we're going to be listening to get to see if you've got good playing spots, number one. Because if you stand in one spot, you're likely to just go, and you get that where you accidentally hit the rim, or you're out of position. So even if we're listening blindly, if we hear sounds like that, it's like the player's not moving around as well as they could. We want to hear that really robust sound all the way up and down. Okay? So now at letter B, okay?
Hmm.
So you see the X, and it was when I notated it the way that I did, I was worried, um, and I thought about it for quite a while. That's why I put the little note at the bottom of the page. Do you have that where it says X equals muffle this note as you play the
Yeah.
following note, the next note. So
Yeah.
so you've got okay or so, and when you muffle, I recommend a lot of people will disengage their fulcrums and they'll stick all their fingers out. I don't like that so much. Let's see if we can get the video. I don't like that so much. A lot of people do that. I like to keep my fulcrum intact and just use 3 fingers. And if you muffle the spot that you hit, it'll go away. If I muffle next to the spot, can you hear that? It kind of lingered a little bit. And you don't want to do that either, because most of the heads nowadays, they've got a coating on them or something like that, so it sounds like you're playing brushes. When I was in high school, heads were clear, and you could do that, and it wasn't a big deal. But you just want to muffle the spot where you're playing. And you want to muffle that right as you play it. You don't want to be. Do you hear how I'm muffling early? It's going bom, ba-da.
Yeah.
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 So if you muffle precisely when you strike the next note, it'll just disappear. Okay? So hopefully that makes some of the muffling clearer as far as the intent of it. Okay? Now, all right, let's talk about, so here's what's happening. The beginning is kind of bombastic, or it starts moderate, then at A it gets forte, and it's got a lot of pace, and it's got chops, it's kind of in your face, it's going, but then it lightens up. So we want to hear a different touch. So be careful as far as your mallet choice. You can choose an articulate mallet like a staccato, or a general mallet is just fine. I don't recommend that you use like ultra staccatos or something like that, because when you get into the section at B, it's going to be a little bit too articulate for that section. I want to hear something nice and warm and gentle, and hear that you've got good touch, and that your rolls are smooth and warm. Okay? So that's the idea when we get to letter B. That section is the contrasting section in the piece. Now, another thing that I would like to point out about rolls. So when you're playing rolls, there's several different approaches to that, but a lot of people, they move their hands really far apart when they play a roll. And that's fine. But when the closer I get to the edge, it's kind of nasally. You know, it's not such a great sound. We want to be about a third of the way in. Okay? So that's my robust area. If I want it to sound more articulated, I play with my mallets together. Close. If I want it to sound a little warmer, I move them apart. I don't know if you can hear any difference there, but I see a lot of people, they'll move their hands way far apart. And the only thing that's wrong with this is that you're kind of close to the bearing edge. So you're not a third of the way in. Does that make sense? We want to keep that about a third of the way in, that equidistant. It's warm, but it doesn't have the low end, the darkness to it. That's better than that. Now, if I'm really trying to make it rumble and get more aggressive, then I move my hands together. If I want it to just be warm and gentle, then I'll move them apart a little bit. So when you're playing that section, okay, so you've got the I'm not playing the right drums, but you can separate those rolls a little bit. And then I'm going to connect the half notes. And again, remember, just like when you're playing that diggity-gong, that really fast triplet, put your shoulders where they need to go, and then your hands will follow, instead of just trying to do everything with your hands from one position. So that's a long way down there, right? So you might have an aggressive motion with your shoulders, but then your hands can just kind of relax and go and move right down to that drum. Um, so hopefully all those things make sense as far as as far as how to approach your roll sound. At letter C, you see that there are some quintuplets or fivelets or whatever you want to call them. So here's the thing, all right? There are a lot of older style composers, like if you go back to Beethoven, 16th notes out in his pieces, and it's not a roll, but it's a sustained sound, okay? So we've got a quarter note triplet that's being played at C. So if you're around here, so that's your quarter note. Dun, 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 and then so you got quarter note triplet, bum. That's the speed of the quarter note triplet. Then you just have your fivelets. So just relax your hands. It's kind of a sustained sound. Don't get super articulate and be punchy. You want to think, because you're in this gentle, it's piano, right? So you've got, if I go back 1, 2, 3, 4 in front of C, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, triplet, triple, sorry, triplet, and so you're just kind of slowing your hands down. So just let your grip be relaxed. Try to get it as warm sounding as you can. You with me on that?
Yeah.
Then you hold that quarter note triplet feel. And then you just carry that through, and it's symmetric modulation to kind of get you back on target. So, yeah. And then the tenuto marks, that's just, you can have a little, it can be slightly accentuated to attack it. But keep it gentle, because again, remember, at letter C, you're piano, and then it only goes to mezzo piano a few bars later. So it's still in the subdued zone. And then when you get to the triplets going into D, then you start to squeeze the mallets a little bit more. And then you're ripping it to the end.
Yeah.
Hopefully that makes sense. Now,
Yeah, I'm with you.
so also, all right, let's look at the end. So you've got your forte piano at the end of the first line of the second page. There's two ways that you can approach forte piano. Okay? You can do, I call it the regular way and the Hollywood way. Okay? So the Hollywood way, I'm going to attack it and then play softly. I'm going to be, let's see. I'm going to be, so I kind of let the overtones dissipate. And then I crescendo out of that. You know, tonight, live. You know, that's what I do for that. But if I'm playing a forte piano, I'll kind of flutter the first couple strokes. So I'll have 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4, I don't know, to attack the beginning of it. So it sounds like a roll. You want it to go when you attack that, and then allow the room to catch up with you. So the overtones have to dissipate, and then crescendo up from piano, and then it's an effect. Okay, so you you might only crescendo for a beat, but allow it to get down to piano before you rip it. Okay? So when you play, you want to just work on that 2, 3, 4, and then you do your um, chromatic walk down. Now, and remember, so on the 23-inch drum, it goes D to A, right? So
Hmm.
it's going A flat, G flat, F, E, then it trades off to E flat, and it's just working its way down. So as you go down chromatically from the top of the range of the drum, it's going to be, you're going to feel a reasonable amount of pedal movement. As you worked your way up, it was small motions to get to bigger intervals. Now it's going to be bigger intervals to smaller motions. Okay, so think about those distances, because even though you're going to play on drums that aren't your drums, okay, might even be a different model of drums when you go to audition, it's going to still have the same characteristics of differences in distance from pitch to pitch. That will be the same, okay? But and it's a little bit of an advanced concept to think about the mechanics of the, it might feel like you're moving a 3/4 of an inch with your foot or your heel, and then it goes a half an inch, and then it goes 1/4 of an inch, so it gets smaller as you go down the range. But if you can think about those things, you're not going to have to worry about getting on drums that you're not comfortable with or that are brand new. It's one of the most difficult aspects of the timpani audition is playing on drums that you've never touched. It's kind of ridiculous in a way, but it is what it is. Everybody has the same um, obstacles to overcome. Okay? The last thing I want to talk about is the ornament at the end. You've got a ruff. Okay? Make sure you single stroke the ruff. Okay? One thing about timpani, okay, and this instrument, it's such an amazing instrument. Like, if you're watching a movie about like a volcano erupting and then the cathedral crashes down, you're going to be hearing timpani going crazy. You have to really pronounce them. So when I'm playing, like if I was just playing what we would call a flam, I'm not going to go. I'm going to pronounce the grace note. I'm not just going to go. Because sometimes it might get buried. Okay? So you have to really pronounce the ornament. When you play the ruff, you're going to play two notes that are small. So you've got to have drop and pop. Drop, pop. So you're going to have to squeeze especially the left hand if you're going right, left, right to play that. But especially on the big drum, you've got, you want to dig into that thing and make it bark. It's forte. At the end, so, and you can see all of my strokes are rebounding. They're coming back up. And that's what we want. We don't want to play into the drum. It's going to get too bright and brittle of a sound if you're downstroking everything. You want everything to relax and rebound, and I can use the weight of my arm to make those big strokes at the end. Okay? I don't have the right intervals on the drum. I don't have a B flat, but I've got I think an E natural, but you get the idea of how this is supposed to sound big, and just at the end it's like, I'm done. Like I've done some of the lightest, sweetest things back at letter B. I've showed my versatility and my smoothness at letter C with rolls, and then trying to keep the rhythms nice and smooth and gentle sounding. And then I can get around the instrument and play some really aggressive um, movements and be clear with that. And then I can tune my brains out chromatically up and down. And then at the end, I get to have fun for a second and just make it sound like um, we knocked all the pillars off of the front of the cathedral and the whole thing's crashing down. And then we're done. so, so that kind of covers all the bases of the piece as far as what I and some of the things that we would be looking for during your audition. Look, there's going to be some of this stuff that it's going to take you a hot minute to figure out. Some of the tuning, just getting used to that motion. Be patient with yourself. Okay?
All right.
Take your time, work your way through it. You will get it eventually. I remember being um, in some situations when I was younger, and I had some really advanced stuff to do. And when I first started, I was like, I can't do that. My feet don't do. I wasn't coordinated enough. It's like I couldn't simultaneously make those things happen. But after a few weeks, I got better, and you'll be surprised. It's like after you start working your way through some of the mechanics, it'll become a lot more natural for you. But really, just take one drum at a time and go chromatically up and chromatically back down. Stop, figure out what you did well, what you could do better, and then do it again. Don't just do it over and over and over, because if you're not nailing it, then you're getting a lot of reps to make sure that you aren't nailing it. So
Yeah.
think of it like um, if it was baseball, you want to step up to the plate and hit. You don't want to swing and miss. So get it right. Or if you made a mistake, stop, analyze that, figure it out, and give it another go. And then it's like, ooh, that was a good one. Great. All right, let's go for 2 in a row. All right, instead of 1 in a row. And then you just be patient with yourself, and you'll start to build good habits. Timpani is the only room that has one etude, and it's longer. It's a couple minutes long. And then you'll have sight reading. So here's what I'll almost 100% guarantee that you're going to deal with when it comes to sight reading. You're probably going to have some kind of an etude that as you play, it might just be 2 drums. And if it's 2 drums, which drums do you think those 2 might be? If you had to pick just 2 out of the set of 4, which would you call the 2 main drums?
The middle two, the 2 and 3.
Yep, you got it. The 26 and the 29. Those are the main ones. If you went to church and played timpani and they only had 2 drums, I'd put solid money on the fact that it's those 2 drums. So, if you only have the 2 pitches, tune them, use those 2 drums. Then you'll probably have 3 or 4 measures where you've got to count tempo, and then you've got to retune the drums, and then you come back in playing. That's probably what you're going to be looking at. Now, so let's talk about how to think about that when you've got 30 seconds, okay? First of all, do a quick scan, look for any crazy rhythms. It's like, is there anything that's really wacky here that you need to quickly look at? If there's not, then just assume that you're going to be fine to sight read those rhythms. Take a good tempo that works. You don't have, even if it says presto, be like, yeah, thanks. No, we're not going to go presto. We're going to go tempo de rito. All right. That's what you want. You want us to hear you do well, not poorly. So there's that. Then look at the distance you have to change each drum. Okay, so let's say the bottom drum you had an F, and then you had a B flat on the middle drum, and then the next pitches are going to be G and C. Okay, so we discussed a minute ago, the bottom pitch for the 29 is what?
Bottom pitchman 29.
Yep,
F.
that's correct. And so the distance between, or from F to G, is that a long way on the pedal or is that a small, short distance?
It's a short distance.
That's exactly right. Um, so if you're in the lower register of the drums, then you know that you're not going to move the pedals that much. Okay?
Hmm.
And so you can look at that. They may not be the same interval, like going from F and B flat to G and C. It might be something different. But the point of me going into that stuff a little while ago about know the mechanics, work on, understand you're in the low register of the drum, you're in the middle register or the high register of the drum. The pedal's going to move a lot in the high register or just a little bit in the low. Knowing those mechanics is going to give you more confidence when you're under the gun of pressure for sight reading. And I've got to count, I've got to keep tempo, and I've got to move these pitches. It's like just plan on if you only have to move two pitches, then if you've got three measures, let's say you have four measures, and the tempo is 1, 2, 3, 4, then you take one drum and you go up. That's your second measure. So rest 2, 3, 4, up, 2, 3, 4, up, 2, 3, 4, and then quickly check them and then play. Okay? So think of it like organize yourself to do things like that instead of, oh, everything's out of time, but I've got to think I'm in time. And you don't want chaos, you want order, right? Um, in those moments like that. So you might have to tune on the fly, but if you do, you can quickly look at it and know that, oh, I'm only going up by step. It's going to be easy, just a little bit of tuning. My ear's good. I can manage that, and I'm good to go.